friends, in this video, let's take a deep dive into the top 10 healthiest protein-rich foods for muscle growth. I'm not just talking about your skeletal muscles like your biceps. Did you know that you have muscles that control your blood pressure, your bowel movements, and your heartbeat? Now, those muscles behave very differently to growth than your biceps. Those hidden muscles are actually so essential for your health, obviously, but when they grow big like your biceps, they get hard. And when they get hard, your body gets harmed. So what I'm about to tell you will be very different than the common online banter you hear about bodybuilding skeletal muscles. And there is nothing wrong with bodybuilding skeletal muscles. That's actually what I'm actively trying to do, unless you're sacrificing your heart and your bowel movements and your blood pressure. So if you watch this video until the end, not only will you learn the best proteins, not just for growing skeletal muscles, but to build your overall health, to reduce your blood pressure and improve your bowel movements. So number one are lentils. I buy these things by the pounds. Let me show you. This is because I eat them weekly. They are so cheap. Have you ever seen how much lentils cost? 1 cup of cooked lentils contain about 18 grams of protein. And people often think of lentils as being an incomplete protein source because it has low levels of leucine and methionine, 2 essential amino acids that you have to eat. Now, to be clear, you have leucine and methionine in lentils. It's just not as high as your chicken breast, which is roughly 40 grams of protein. Double the amount of protein in a cooked cup of lentils. But the problem really isn't the amount of protein. Simply eat twice as much lentils if you want twice as much protein. I boil my lentils, super easy to cook. It literally takes like 15 to 20 minutes. You can soak them overnight. They'll be easier to cook. And then you add them to soups and curries, or even make lentil pancakes or lentil breads with your soaked lentils. They are a great source of protein with unrefined starch, yet they still give you that starchy texture that we all love to eat. And when you eat your pancakes made out of white flour or your bread made out of white flour, that is such empty calories that it's best to replace them with lentils. But the best benefit of lentils isn't just because it's affordable, it's high in protein, it's nutrient dense, and it's easy to prepare. It really comes down to the quality of the protein, its food matrix, that gives you the true metabolic benefits that meats like chicken just can't do. Now, here's what I'm talking about. So when you eat chicken, you're eating more essential amino acids, yes, called methionine and leucine, definitely compared to lentils. Let me tell you about these 2 amino acids. First, your body can't make these 2 amino acids. That's why you have to eat them. And that's why bodybuilders, they seek foods high in methionine and leucine to build their skeletal muscles. And I don't blame them. But the thing is, protein itself does more than just build your muscles. It really is the scaffolding for your entire tissue, like your organs. It gives you the structure. It basically scaffolds your whole body, your skin. It repairs muscles, and it also makes enzymes. It regulates hormones. It's a part of your immune defense, and it makes communication signaling in your nervous system. They're called neurotransmitters. It also makes nutrient transmitters, and it balances your fluid and your electrolytes. It's an energy backup as well. That is why everyone stresses you just have to eat a lot of protein. But really, eating enough protein is very different than eating an excessive amount of protein. And if you're eating enough food to maintain your weight, just know that the average American eats twice as much protein as they need. So if you're eating the average American diet, you don't need to go out of your way to get more leucine and methionine. Now remember, I just told you proteins regulate hormones. Hormones like insulin. And guess what? It can raise your insulin even if you don't eat any carbohydrates. But if you're eating, let's say, rice with your chicken, you will just pack on more fat faster due to a higher insulin surge from both the rice and the chicken. High insulin promotes growth, specifically fat cells to grow. So if you want a recipe to get fat fast, eat foods to get your insulin higher. But if you want to lose weight, you must lower your insulin. Now, some people do that by skipping all carbohydrates, all starches, all sugars. Just eat protein. And again, there's a metabolic trade-off. High leucine stimulates high insulin. On the other hand, methionine doesn't actually increase your insulin, but it increases growth signaling through methylation and insulin-like growth factor 1, which is needed for your muscles to grow, but it also increases increases the growth of your heart muscle and the growth of the smooth muscles that surround your blood vessels, which actually control your blood pressure and the muscles in your colon. And that's the problem. Unfortunately, chronically high IGF-1, it leads to the heart getting too thick too fast. That's cardiac hypertrophy. That increases high blood pressure. And that also increases colonic polyps that can lead to cancer, colon cancer specifically. Growth is not necessarily a good thing when it's not normal, healthy growth. So when you eat chicken, those proteins raise IGF-1 a ton more than lentils. And IGF-1, sure, it promotes your skeletal muscles to grow by activating mTOR pathways. It increases muscle protein synthesis and stimulates satellite cells that help muscle fibers to grow, especially after resistant training or injury. But again, persistently high levels of IGF-1 will promote cell proliferation and reduce actually apoptosis across many tissues, not just your muscles. So that's why higher IGF-1 levels are associated with increased risk of several different types of cancers. So just so that you know, no amount of protein will make your skeletal muscles grow. It won't make you build muscle. You literally have to exercise to grow any muscle. And that's why people who just eat, they get fat. They don't get more skeletal muscles, right? Couch potatoes don't look like bodybuilders. You don't gain muscle, but you'll gain fat if you just eat protein. So this is why you have to exercise. When you exercise, when you stress your skeletal muscles, that's when you get to bulk up. Exercise raises locally short-term insulin-like growth factor 1 to signal the muscles to grow, which is necessary for the muscles to grow. The problems just arise when you're eating a ton of IGF-1 and it stays chronically high, despite the fact that you're not exercising. When there's no shutoff valve, like when people eat excess calories, they eat all day long, they eat lots of animal protein. Well, growth signals remain high throughout the body all the time. It's not just, in your muscles. So this increases cancer risk and aging risk. The key point is that muscles need brief localized IGF-1 pulses driven by exercise, resistant training, not by constant eating. That's not the right exercise. Hence, don't eat so often. And when you eat, lay low on the chicken, but increase the resistant training to avoid chronically high systemic IGF-1 levels. And that's why lentils are so beneficial. They're low in methionine. They're low in branched chain amino acids, which doesn't promote excessive IG1 signaling, unlike animal products. Yet, it supports muscle growth and immune repair. It's simply false to believe that you can't be a bodybuilder or an Olympic speed machine by not eating meat. It's been proven to be wrong. But it's not just lentils that have the right profile of amino acids to support your longevity and health. When you eat lentils, though, you're eating it in a fiber-rich food matrix with resistant starch. And they both dramatically lowers glycemic loads and feeds beneficial gut bacteria that produce butyrate, a short-chain fatty acid that's strongly protective against colon cancer and intestinal inflammation. Your chicken can't do that, folks. So how can you start? Make a lentil bowl. Boil your lentils as directed, drain it, top that with some parsley, of course chop it, chop red onions, and then some steamed broccoli and kale. You can add a spoonful of sauce made out of tahini, lemon juice, black pepper, and a pinch of turmeric with some grated clove and garlic. All that you soak together with a couple of softened dates and 2 tablespoons of balsamic vinegar. Blend it, see what it tastes like. If you like it, pour it over your bowl. It delivers a nice, slow protein, resistant starch, and polyphenol release that increases butyrate production to help reduce inflammation in your colon. And it keeps, again, the IGF-1 signaling low. It's filling, it's tasting, it allows you to have something delicious and starchy without increasing your blood sugar spikes, and it decreases cholesterol, which makes it an ideal food for a long day, post-workout, or when you want a recovery with healthy inflammation that continues when you eat foods that stimulate excessive IGF-1. Now, number 2 are chickpeas or garbanzo beans. 1 cooked cup of chickpeas contain 14 to 18 grams of protein. Now, chickpeas provide, again, a slow release of protein, just like lentils, that stabilizes your blood sugar and your insulin levels. It doesn't spike it, unlike bread. They contain saponins and polyphenols that reduce bile acid toxicity in your colon. Bile acids are irritants, and that's one mechanism that potentially can cause colon cancer, having excessive bile irritating your intestines. Again, chickpeas are low in leucine and methionine, which means you don't get the excessive insulin and IGF-1 surges that happens when you eat meat and chicken. So make a chickpea metabolic salad. So mash some chickpeas with some diced diced cucumber, celery, and red bell pepper. Add some chopped walnuts. Fold that all in a mustard lemon juice sauce that has a little bit of vinegar. I like balsamic. Add some grated garlic, onion powder, chipotle chili to taste. Chop some apples. Blend that all. This works well to make that a delicious, practical meal prep. Chickpeas stabilize insulin response, and if you add vinegar, well, that lowers post-meal glucose while improving insulin sensitivity. It's a great replacement for chicken or tuna without triggering inflammatory pathways when you eat those foods. And remember, chickpeas are a low saturated fat food. Now, I know there's a lot of people online telling you to stop eating carbohydrates to get your insulin down. Now, although I don't agree with their method, I do agree with the principle. Get your insulin down. Prolonged excessive insulin exposure fundamentally alters how your cardiac muscle and your colonic smooth muscles behave. It doesn't strengthen them, but they actually push them towards stiffness, hypertrophy, and dysfunction. Insulin just isn't for blood sugar hormone. It is a powerful growth and anti-apoptotic signaling molecule. So when your insulin remains chronically elevated, tissues that are meant to stay supple and rhythmically kind of responsive, they begin to remodel in a very unhealthy way, making them rigid and stiff. And in cardiac tissue, chronic hyperinsulinemia drives hypertrophic signaling through pathways like mTOR. So when your heart muscle cells are large, that's not because the heart is getting stronger, but it's because they are responding to constant growth cues. At the same time, insulin promotes sodium retention, sympathetic nervous system activation, and increased intracellular calcium. The result is that the heart becomes thicker, stiffer, and less compliant. Relaxation suffers first. And over time, this contributes to heart failure, diastolic dysfunction, reduced filling, higher filling pressures, and eventually your heart's going to poop out, won't be able to compensate. Excessive insulin also increases fibrosis, so scarring in the heart by stimulating fibroblasts and collagen deposition, which further then stiffens your heart and disrupts the electrical conduction, increasing arrhythmias. And your colon, those smooth muscles, well, the problem is a bit different, but somewhat related. So smooth muscles, they're designed to stay relaxed most of the time. Unless you're having a bowel movement, then it has to contract in a coordinated way to expel your poop. But chronic excessive insulin that interferes with this balance by promoting smooth muscles to get large, and it alters this nitric oxide signaling. Now, insulin resistance at the cellular level paradoxically coexists with excessive growth signaling, and this leads to thicker, less responsive, smooth muscle layers. The colon becomes more rigid and less coordinated. This means peristalsis or movement weakens, your transient time to poop slows, and then you get chronic constipation, which can't be solved with just fiber alone. It's actually a neuromuscular problem stemmed from metabolism. And excessive insulin also worsens low-grade insulin in the gut wall and further impairing motility and increasing visceral hypersensitivity. Basically, for both muscles, you're losing flexibility. And you can imagine over time it produces stiff, fibrotic muscles that have a problem relaxing. It's uncoordinated, so there's dysregulated rhythm, which doesn't sound good, especially in your heart. And this is why hyperinsulinemia can show up as heart stiffness, high blood pressure, arrhythmias, constipation, bloating, and gut dysmotility long before you see super high blood sugars and diabetes diagnosed. Those tissues have been telling you something's been wrong for quite a while. You know, the muscles that you don't see, it actually needs to be soft and pliable. And another food that helps it do that are black beans. Number 3. They're rich in anthocyanins and fermentable fiber that improve your insulin sensitivity and reduce oxidative stress in the gut. Hence, black beans are a great addition to add to really anything you eat, including your meats. Black bean protein comes packaged with compounds that reduce endotoxin absorption. It helps to calm immune overactivation that is driving autoimmune diseases. This takes us to another reason why animal meats are problematic. They are high in fat, specifically saturated fat. Saturated fat increases endotoxemia. So this means it allows toxins made by bacteria to leak inside your bloodstream that induces inflammation. Does that sound good? Yeah, I don't think so. And when I was a kid, even though my mom would feed us meat, she always asked us not to eat the fat. And it's not just because it's fatty, but fat traps in fat-soluble toxins that the animals have have been eating in their environment. That's where they store it. So every time you eat animal fat, whether that's pure fat tissue or marbleized meat, you're eating the pollutants that the animals have been collecting in their lifetime eating on that farm. Now, there's a reason why they ask pregnant women not to lose weight. That's because when you lose a ton of weight, you not only lose the fat, but you're releasing the toxins that were in the fat. And those toxins are toxic to the fetus. So when you eat that from an animal, don't you think it would be toxic to you? Hence, I get my fats from plants. Make a black bean gut protective bowl. Use black beans with sauteed onions, garlic, cumin, and oregano, then serve them over shredded cabbage or arugula instead of rice. Especially white rice is essentially a starch. I personally would add some avocado for the fat, but also because it tastes good. Black beans provide anthocyanins that protect colonic cells from oxidative damage. Now, the raw greens, they supply magnesium and chlorophyll, and they can help reduce colon cancer risks.
Hi friends, I am so thrilled that you want to take charge of your health and take charge of your food. Now, I know nutrition can be complex, but it doesn't have to be. And I'm here to support you in this lifelong journey. So if you point your camera app to this QR code, it'll take you to a link for a free handout that I created just for you. And if you like it, if you want to see other handouts, please go to the link in my show notes, and then you can leave me your feedback on what I could do to help you in your journey. Okay, back to the video now.
Now notice so far, I've only been talking about whole food that are based on plants. These foods have low glycemic loads. They are high in fiber, high in phytonutrients, and vitamins and minerals. And if you listen to my video, you would think that I'm asking you to make a huge shift in your food options. That sounds so daunting, but the reality is you don't need to go 100% whole plants. Large population studies consistently show that just replacing some of your meat, as little as 10% of the calories from your meat, your animal protein to plant protein, you can significantly improve your health and longevity. That's as simple as swapping one animal-based protein per serving per day with something that's plant equivalent. This alters your hormonal signaling, reduces inflammation, improves your gut health, and all these are actually measurable over time. Now remember, longevity is not about perfection. It's about going in the right direction. So far I've been talking about foods that are high in protein, but their amino acid profile are less desirable for people looking for animal meat-like quantities of methionine and leucine. But don't worry, the next option will fill that gap. Number 4, soybeans. Eat them whole, not isolated. We're not talking about soy protein isolates. We're talking about the whole soybean, the edamame bean, or tofu. Soybeans definitely have a complete plant profile of amino acids, yet they don't have the excessive amounts of methionine and branched-chain amino acids that animal proteins have. And in addition, soy isoflavones, they reduce insulin-like growth factor 1 signaling, and they are associated with lower breast, prostate, and colon cancer risks. And think about substituting your meat dishes with some soybeans. Toss steamed edamame. Oftentimes, I'll cut up some tofu with mushrooms, scallions, and ginger and finish it with a splash of miso. Mushrooms are a great source of 2 longevity molecules, ergothioneine and beta-glucans, that synergize with your soy's immune modulating effects. Now, the overall amino acid profile of soybeans, that supports your muscle without excessive TOR activation to mess with your heart and your smooth muscles. Soybeans are one of the most consistently beneficial swaps when it comes to aging research. That's why it's a longevity food. So that brings us back to another bean. It's actually called a pea, split peas, which are exceptionally low glycemic index, highly satiating, and a great source of protein packaged in fiber. There are fermentable fibers, increase propionate production, which improves insulin sensitivity and reduces liver fat. And from a longevity standpoint, split peas, they allow protein intake without overstimulating excessively growth pathways that accelerate aging tissue to become cancerous. Now, if you're looking for something warm and comforting, make some split pea soup. Cook your split peas with onions, garlic, carrots, celery, bay leaf, and thyme until it's thick. This soup has an exceptionally low glycemic index, is really satiating because of the high fiber. It supports your liver and gut health through the propionate production, which improves your insulin sensitivity. So different than eating foods high in saturated fat from meat. Let's say your Korean barbecue. Saturated fat, remember, affects your heart and your gut smooth muscles. It's really not the calories. It's not even cholesterol. It's more that it changes signaling and inflammation. So these tissues depend on flexibility, timing, electrical coordination. Saturated fat incorporated into the cell membranes actually makes your cell membranes more rigid. Mitochondria membranes, it makes them more rigid. And this simply reduces the membrane fluidity, which impairs ion channel function, calcium handling, and electrical stability. Remember, your heart doesn't just poop out. It poops out when it's unable to relax, when it's unable to fill properly. And remember those toxins? Saturated fat increases ceramide and diacylglycerol production, which interferes with your insulin signaling inside cardiomyocytes. And this results in insulin resistance in your heart, reduced glucose uptake, and a greater reliance on fatty acid oxidation, which actually generates more oxidative stress per unit of ATP. And over time, this promotes lipotoxicity, mitochondrial dysfunction, and fibrotic remodeling or scar tissue. And in the heart, this shows up as diastolic stiffness, higher blood pressure, and increased arrhythmias. Doesn't sound good, does it? And all this can happen even if you don't block your coronary arteries. Saturated fat also directly activates inflammatory pathways in the heart. It stimulates toll-like receptor signaling and NF-kappa B activation, increases cytokine production and collagen depositions. And so your fibroblasts, then they respond by laying down excessive extracellular matrix, further stiffening your cardiac tissue. Not good for survival. And this is one reason saturated fat intake correlates so strongly with heart failure with preserved ejection fraction, a condition defined more by stiffness than by weakness. So in the gut, the target are the smooth muscles and the enteric nervous system. And when you have smooth muscles in the colic and intestine, what are they supposed to do? They're supposed to contract and relax to kind of propel your stool. But saturated fat impairs their ability to relax because it impairs nitric oxide signaling and increases local inflammation. Smooth muscle cells exposed to high saturated fat become less responsive to relaxation signals and are more prone to tonic contraction. And the gut wall then thickens slightly, motility slows, and peristalsis becomes so uncoordinated that you just don't get the job done. And hence, people are constipated, they're bloating, they feel abdominal pressure, and when they do poop, it's incomplete. They don't feel like they've pooped well. And in addition, saturated fat also alters your gut microbiome. It increases endotoxin producing bacteria. And then these endotoxins, they cross the gut barrier more easily than when you don't eat the saturated fat. So this is due to a weakened tight junction, with further weakens tight junctions. And then you end up with chronic low-grade inflammation that feeds back to your smooth muscle and enteric cells, further reducing motility. Hence, so many people are constipated when they eat high-fat diets. And sometimes fiber alone can't take care of it. When the muscle becomes metabolically stiff, it's really hard to jumpstart that. We want it to stay soft and dynamic, whether it's your heart, so that it doesn't have impaired relaxation or electrical instability, or your gut, so that you don't feel sluggish and bloated, that you can move freely and be coordinated. These effects, they start happening long before anybody can diagnose anything from a high insulin level or other more severe damage. And hence is why improving your heart and gut function is not just about eating a lot of protein or eating less fat. It's about changing the type of fat and your type of protein. Replace saturated fat with monounsaturated fats, basically plant-based fats that restores your membrane fluidity, improves your insulin signaling, and reduces inflammation. This supports your cardiac and smooth muscles to regain flexibility that they need for you to be healthy. Number 6 are ruby red kidney beans, which support a strong gut barrier and immune tolerance when it's properly cooked. The resistant starch lowers post-meal insulin and feeds beneficial microbes that suppress chronic inflammation. This is opposite of animal protein, which lacks the fiber entirely and increases your risk of colon cancer, including bile acids. Kidney beans are one of the most versatile plant proteins. Once you stop treating them like a side dish and start using them as a base, you may discover that it tastes pretty good. The key rule is that they must be fully cooked. No, don't use a slow cooker to cook them. You can put them in after they're fully cooked. You have to properly cook and neutralize the lectins to make it gut-friendly and anti-inflammatory. And one of the easiest uses of kidney beans is to make a kidney bean bowl. So you cook your kidney beans, you toss it with some chopped onion, some garlic, cumin, smoked paprika, and oregano. And then you serve that over shredded cabbage. You can add some arugula and kale too instead of rice. This keeps the glycemic load low. You can consider adding a squeeze of lemon or vinegar, which further improves insulin response. And kidney beans, they work extremely well in a plant-based chili chili without meat. So you combine the cooked kidney beans with tomatoes, bell peppers, onions, garlic, chili powder, and cocoa powder or cinnamon. And this creates a high protein, high polyphenol meal that feeds your beneficial gut microbiota. And when you avoid the saturated fat, you reduce the endotoxin load that would have come from a meat-based chili. And from a longevity standpoint, this is a direct animal protein swap with measurable metabolic benefit. And another dish you can make is a kidney bean mash. Lightly mash those cooked beans, add garlic, lemon juice, black pepper, and herbs, and then spread that onto a whole grain toast or put it in between two pieces of bread like a sandwich filling. This works as a replacement for meat spreads and delivers protein in a form that slows digestion and stabilizes blood sugar rather than just sprinkling it. Kidney beans also shine in cold salads. Mix them with diced cucumber, red onion, parsley, and a mustard vinegar dressing. And when you refrigerate your beans, it actually increases their resistant starch content, which improves your insulin sensitivity, increases short-chain fatty acids in the colon. This is particularly useful for people focused on metabolic health and autoimmune health through gut repair. And if you want a comfort food, use your kidney beans added to soups, stews, carrots, celery, onion, bay leaf, and thyme. This combination supports immune tolerance by reducing gut permeability while delivering steady amino acids without excessive IGF-1 stimulation. This is totally especially useful in periods of illness or recovery when your protein need goes up, but you have all this inflammation, which should stay low. And if you want more protein, kidney beans can be blended into a bean-based burger patty with oats, flax seeds, and spices. But unlike commercial plant burgers, this version avoids refined oils and processed grains, and especially processed isolates. I keep methionine low, saturated fat low, toxin exposure low, but I want to support my muscles for maintenance. Hence, I still am looking for good sources of protein, like number 7, nutritional yeast, which is concentrated fungal protein along with beta-glycans and a ton of B vitamins that support your immune surveillance without overstimulating your immune system. And yes, they're low-fat food. So is methionine. These don't raise your blood sugars. So when you add nutritional yeast to meals, you increase this protein density while reinforcing longevity benefits from making that substitution from animal to plant. And a surprising recipe could be for you to try a nutritional yeast protein sauce. So you blend nutritional yeast with warm water, add garlic, lemon juice, mustard, and black pepper until it's creamy. You can pour it over steamed vegetables, potatoes, or beans. This adds protein, B vitamins, soluble fiber, and immune support. This is one of the easiest ways to increase plant protein density without adding calories or toxins. Number 8 is wheat germ, which is rich in protein, vitamin E, zinc, and polyphenols that protect cell membranes and DNA from oxidative damage. Now, 1 tablespoon has 2 grams of protein. 3.5 tablespoons would equal 1 ounce of meat. Now, wheat germ supports your immune resilience and your hormone balance, while it remains free of saturated fat and inflammatory lipid byproducts common in animal proteins. You can add it to bread and bakery recipes. And another overlooked option is basically to add some wheat germ to your breakfast. Sprinkle it onto oats. Stir wheat germ into cooked steel-cut oats along with ground flaxseed and some cinnamon. Add some berries. This creates a slow digesting protein fiber matrix that stabilizes morning blood sugars and supports hormone balance while you avoid the IGF-1 spikes seen in eggs and dairy-based breakfasts. Now, number 9 are walnuts, which is one of those few great protein sources that also comes with another essential nutrient called omega-3 fatty acids. Specifically, it has alpha-linolenic acid. Walnuts also have elagotannins, which gut bacteria can convert into urolithins, compounds linked to mitochondrial health and reduce colon cancer risks. So literally, you eat walnuts, you slow aging biology. For snacks, try walnut lentil spread. Blend cooked lentils with walnuts, garlic, lemon juice, and herbs into a thick spread. And this combination provides protein, fiber, omega-3s, polyphenols that can be converted into urolithins by your gut microbiome. This is so supportive of your mitochondria as well as your colon. I like to just sprinkle walnuts on tacos, spring rolls, any kind of grain. It adds a crunchy texture. Number 10 are pistachios, which is another rich protein source that has fiber and carotenoids carotenoids, that color, that green color, that improves endothelial function and your insulin sensitivity. Now, pistachio protein, again, it doesn't cause those insulin and IGF-1 spikes associated with animal proteins and chicken. Pistachios are an easy, realistic solution, fun to eat, that can replace 10% of your animal protein. A simple pistachio plate can replace animal snacks entirely. You may want to pair your pistachios with vegetables or hummus made from chickpeas and tahini. This keeps your amino acid delivery slow and steady, lowering your post-meal insulin and reduces inflammatory signaling, definitely compared to cheese or meat snacks. And this list is just 10 different foods. There's so many other high protein options. And if you want to learn more, watch the next video.